Hello everyone, welcome back to session 4. In this video, we'll discuss about scopes. Scope defines whatever variables and functions we have created, where exactly they are accessible and can be used. There are three different kinds of scopes: global, local, and block. Now let's write some code to better understand each and every scope which is there. Let me create a file name as scopes.js, right? So in global scope, as the name itself suggests, variables are accessible throughout the entire program, right? So let's say if I define a variable called as global variable and the value in it is global, right? If I even write a function, let's say first, and in this function, let's say I just do a console.log global variable and call this function, it will print the value. So let me run the file. It is printing global, right? And let's create another function which is also going to do the same thing. Function second, and let's call console.log global variable, and if I call this method also, is again going to print the value as global. But inside this second method, let's say if I print updated the global to global changed, right? And let's call the first method again, right? In this you will see that first first method was executed in which it printed global. Then the second method was executed in which it printed first whatever value was there for global, and then it updated the value of global variable to be global changed. And when the third time when the first function was executed, um, this time it printed global change because that's what the new value holds. While in local scope, variables declared within a function are only accessible within that function, right? What does I mean by that? Let's say I create a local variable here and the value is local. I print the local variable in the second method, right? This time it is printing local, right? So the second when the second method is getting executed, it is printing local. But if I try to uh, access that particular local variable inside my first function, it will give an error. Reason is, first function does not have any idea what a local variable means, right? So that is what a local scope is. A variable that is defined within a function stays within the scope of that function and cannot be utilized anywhere outside it, right? One key highlight or keynote to remember is basically, if I have removed this variable, right, var keyword from it, now if I try to let me first run the second function, right? So this time it will become, this local variable itself will become a global variable because there is no var keyword that has been defined. So it treats this particular variable as a global variable. That's what is basically a global and a local variable. But in ES6, right, there was another scope which was introduced, which is called as a block scope. So in block scope, variables are limited to the specific block, which means a block is basically a code which is enclosed with a set of curly braces, right? So let's say if I define these curly braces, um, and another key thing here is, a block scope can only be defined with let and const keyword. So let's define this block variable, right? And let's name it block. And if I just try to print this block variable, this time it will print block as the first. Let me remove this or comment these lines for better understanding, right? So now it is printing the block value. But let's say in the first function, I try to use this, right? So I'll just try to use the block variable, which is not inside the block, right? So the access or the scope of a block variable as it is defined with let keyword is within this scope only. So inside this scope, let's say if I had defined a function, right? Let's call it third function. In this, if I try to print the console log block variable, right? And here, let me comment this line out, and let's comment this as well. And let's try to print the third function, right? Let's call this third function. Here it is able to execute, right? Because reason for that is because now third function is in a scope within this where this particular block variable has been defined. right? Let's say if I had defined this with var keyword, with which we had defined the global variables, now this also would have become a global variable. So if I uncomment this line out in the first method and let's execute first method, right, you'll see it is able to print that. So that's what a block scope is. These are all the different kinds of scopes that are available in JavaScript, and that's it for this video. Thank you for watching.